My name is Candice Mushatt. I am the director of the Flint Community Lab, which is the first of its kind community built and community run water lab in the nation. We are also the first to become a certified drinking water compliance lab. And it is my pleasure to serve as your moderator this evening for Youth for Global Health and Social Justice as they celebrate Women in Water, Breaking Barriers, and the panel discussion. We have an exciting panel that will join us this evening. I do want to give you a little bit of background about our topic. By 2040, an estimated 97 trillion in global infrastructure investment will be required to support sustained development, two-thirds of which will be needed in developing countries. To ensure equitable access to service in both everyday life and times of crises, gender mainstreaming must be integrated into infrastructure planning, particularly during the design phase. Gender responsive infrastructure can help address gender inequalities, empower women, and help enhance social and economic mobility for women, girls, and other marginalized groups. Joining me now are our panelists for this evening. Good evening, ladies. Thank you both so very much for joining us for this discussion on women in water breaking barriers. If you don't mind, I'd like to start with just a brief introduction of the both of you. Please share three key highlights about yourself, including your full name and the country you represent, and either of you can start.
Hello, everyone. I am Felicity Adetumoju Thompson, an African American originally from Nigeria, married to an African American originally from Sierra Leone, and soon to be an Episcopal clergy woman. I'm deeply committed to faith-driven justice work, including advocacy for racial equity, gun violence prevention, community outreach, and engagement. A thought I ponder over daily is, what have I done for the least of these? I serve as a seminarian at an Episcopal church where I provide pastoral care, support outreach ministries, and create spaces for dialogue and healing. And my work extends beyond the church, engaging in public health initiatives, social justice, advocacy, and finding practical solutions for underserved communities, including food insecurity, housing, healthcare, and access to basic needs like water and sanitation.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Radiatu Nama Alikbi from Ghana in West Africa. I'm currently pursuing a Master of Accountancy at North Carolina A&T State University. I'm developing my expertise in financial regulation, data analytics, and corporate governance. I'm also working towards getting my CPA license too as well. As well married, and I moved to the US just last year to pursue my master's program too as well.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for joining us this evening. Being from Flint and having one of the most notable water crises in recent history in America, the impact is still to this day, even though it went public in 2015, the impact to this day is still immeasurable. What are some of the current water challenges in your country, and how do they disproportionately affect women and girls? And either of you can go ahead and start.
In Jos, Nigeria, and many parts of the country, water scarcity and contamination create significant challenges for women and girls. Many communities rely on unsafe or unreliable water sources, leading to waterborne diseases like cholera and typhoid. And women and girls often bear the responsibility of fetching water, which can take hours each day, limiting their time for education and economic opportunities. Additionally, the lack of clean water and proper sanitation facilities in schools makes it difficult for girls to manage menstruation with dignity, leading to higher dropout rates. And then in the rural areas on the outskirts of towns, wells and boreholes are intentionally dug, and water tanks are set up to collect rainwater or tap into underground resources. And recently, my family dug a borehole. These systems, though, rely heavily on what nature provides, making them vulnerable to climate variability and seasonal droughts, which usually occur during Harmattan. When these sources run dry or are contaminated, women and girls must travel even further in search of water, exposing them to impact on their health, safety, and again, economic well-being.
Mm.
Water is life, yet access to clean and safe water remains a privilege for many in Ghana. We face limited access to clean water. Many rural and pre-urban areas lack access to safe drinking water, forcing residents to rely on contaminated surface water sources, leading to waterborne diseases like cholera and typhoid. Pollution of water sources. Illegal mining, also known as galamsey, and industrial activities contaminate rivers and then groundwaters with mercury, heavy metals, and other pollutants. Just last year, the youth protested due to this illegal mining. Also, inadequate water infrastructure. Many communities lack piped water systems, forcing people to rely on these unsafe water sources. Poor maintenance of boreholes, wells, leading to frequent breakdowns and water shortages. Women, unfortunately, often bear the responsibilities of fetching water, sometimes walking long distances, which reduces their time for education and income generating activities. Also, there's impact on their health. A first-hand witness to this health risks. My mom suffered from severe headache due to her continuous carrying of water before we moved to the city. Also, contaminated water increases the risk of infection, especially in pregnant women, where there's defects in the unborn babies. Also, there's education distractions. Girls often miss schools to fetch water, affecting their academic performance and increasing dropout rates. Schools without proper water and sanitation facilities make it difficult for girls to manage menstrual hygiene, leading to absenteeism. Also, women and girls collecting water in remote areas face the risk of harassment and assault, especially when fetching water early in the mornings and then late at night. Thank you.
Yes, and you spoke a little bit about cholera and typhoid and mercury poisoning. I want to delve a little bit deeper into some of the adverse healthcare things that happen as it relates to water. The global water crisis significantly impacts the healthcare sector. How prepared are these countries to address these challenges?
Depending on where you are, in the big cities, there are labs and research institutions that take care of these issues. But if you're in the rural areas, which are, of course, more than the cities and bigger towns, um, you run the risk of having untreated water and not knowing that your water is not treated or has been polluted.
Also, Ghana has made some progress, but they still face gaps in fully addressing water-related healthcare challenges in various rural areas, especially. They have installed governments policies and initiatives like the WASH, which is the Water Sanitation and Hygiene Policies, where government through the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources has set targets to improve WASH infrastructure in healthcare facilities. Also, they have national community water sanitation strategies it aims to expand access to safe water, particularly in underserved regions. And I think with collaboration with international bodies like UNICEF, WHO, and in the World Bank, they support this WASH initiative as well. And public-private partnerships too as well, like NGO, where they invest in sustainable water solutions for hospitals and clinics.
So, as I listen to the both of you speak, I notice we talk about the interruption in education, just trying to get to, and we can't even necessarily use the word safe drinking water, but just to get to a water source. Can you both just talk a little bit more about what that interruption in education looks like, and what is the trajectory of life for women and young girls once that education is interrupted?
Well, usually education is interrupted when menstruation starts or when a young girl is um her time is needed more at home. If mom is disabled or there's just some reason why she's needed more doing those chores at home that um an older woman would be doing. And so, but usually it's the teenage years that that education is interrupted. It's usually in the rural areas where education, Western education, is not seen as important as traditional education. So that's when the interruption happens. It leads, of course, to not having um, access to the more high-paying jobs. It leads to this young person not being able to be more economically stable and having to rely on her husband or her family to take care of her.
Mhm.
Back home, fetching of water is solely the responsibility of the girl child. So as a result, where she's supposed to go to school, the time she's supposed to go to school, she uses it to fetch water. Most of the times, this access to water is far from where she lives. So absolutely, she has to go far away, and then resulting to her missing classes. And sometimes they even have it develops their disinterest in education, making them stay home and then depending on their husbands.
And I know even when we talk about when the young ladies are coming of age and they start dealing with menstruation, or we talk about them having to make sure they're fetching enough water for the household, what are some of the impacts that not having enough water would have on their daily lives?
Well, not having access to clean water for the whole house means they are now susceptible to typhoid and cholera. And not having clinics nearby is then becomes a challenge. Family members lose time for school, time for working, maybe in the rural area, it's time for working on the farm. Mom may be a trader in the market. Everything goes downhill when the clean water is not there for drinking, for cooking, for even just to wash clothes. So it's a big problem.
So when there's no clean water, it impacts everyone in the household. It's everyone's work comes to a standstill. The mother, the father, everyone is not able to go to work to go by their day-to-day activities. As a result, sometimes it impacts on their their livelihood, because the mother and the father has to go out and go and make ends meet. But when there is no water, it distracts all these activities, making it difficult for ends meeting at home.
Mhm. And so when we talk about seeing some of these things. So, for instance, in Flint, where there is access to a certain type of education, but not necessarily education around water and the importance of people going into wastewater careers, or young women pursuing more scientific, especially African American young women pursuing more scientific or STEM sectors, especially in the water sector. One of the things that we were able to see here during the water crisis, when we talk about healthcare effects, women were having miscarriages. There were women who lost their hair. There have been all kind of rashes and different just a lot of different adverse health effects that happen here. And you would think that being in a state where we were surrounded by water, that we're surrounded by fresh water, that access to water is guaranteed. And one of the lessons that we learned the hard way is that clean, safe water is not a guarantee, and that we often have to make sure that we are advocating for clean water no matter what country you're in, and that we are, especially as women, advocating for our voices to be heard in these spaces, because we do deal with a lot of different things health wise where clean water is a must. And so when we look at advocacy, what are some of the ways that women can support and uplift one another in the fight for clean water and sanitation? I do want to step back and ask another question before we get to that. How often in your respective countries do you see women in water careers, or fighting for water, or advocating for water, clean
I,
water?
I think that is something with the exposure to the internet, exposure to social media, and just education. One person talking to another, or women talking to each other in social gatherings, whether it's in religious gatherings or family gatherings. The word has spread. People know. If you don't know, you're hidden away somewhere. So because of this, people have empowered each other by educating each other in their local languages, in their own context, so that women understand and men understand too, that it's not just the woman's responsibility, but it is the man's responsibility too, to make sure that the family has clean water. There's lots of education in the schools, starting from kindergarten all the way up.
So for my country, I realized that special their youth, we are advocating for what is rightful ours. For instance, as I mentioned earlier, last year the youths came out in their numbers to protest from every corner of the country. They all came to the main city where the president is, to advocate for the clean water as a result of galamsey, which is illegal mining, because it's contaminating a lot of water bodies in Ghana. In 2022, about 60%, it was said about 60% of our water bodies were being contaminated by galamsey. So I think now the youth, we know um, what's what we need, and then we are advocating for it extensively.
Can you talk a little bit more about, and I think that is something important for everyone watching to know. Can you talk a little bit more about the illegal mining and what that means for safe, clean water and access to it?
So the illegal mining back home, it's mainly because of gold. So they have small scale miners where they areas where they realize that there is a distribution of gold. They go in there, they don't do it the proper way, so they end up polluting water bodies. So we realize that instead of a lot of measures to be put in place for it to be commercialized. These people in these rural areas, they go in there and then they do the small scale mining. And then to surprise you that these small scale miners are being contracted by big politicians out there, because gold out there brings a lot of income. So when they go in there and then do this illegal mining, they send it out. And sometimes, most of the times, it's not being refined. So it's being sold at the least prices. So they do that and then they send it to big politicians, and then yes, it impacts a lot.
Hmm.
And
Thank you
in
for that. Go ahead.
and in Jos, Jos is known for steel mining. And there's been steel mining in Jos since the early 1900s. And it first started with the colonial masters, and then locals have now taken on um, mining steel. One big problem it leaves is when the mining is done, the holes are not covered. So people ignore the holes, and next thing you know, a small child drowns, or someone who just doesn't know how to swim drowns in the hole during rainy season. And so that's another bad outcome of mining in Joss.
Mm. And thank you both very much for explaining a little bit more about mining and the dangers that it causes, both to having access to safe water, and not only that, just public safety. And if someone might need help or might not be able to swim or something of that nature, that how dangerous it can be for them. I want to go back to discussing advocacy. And you talked a little bit about one of the ways that advocacy is already happening in those countries is that people are talking, if they have internet access, if they can do word of mouth, if if they just neighbor to neighbor. So what are some of the ways that women around the world can help bring notoriety and advocate for you? What are some of the ways that we can better educate ourselves?
I feel communicating across the Atlantic by adopting a town or jurisdiction over there is important. Exchanging ideas, because I feel we're all human and we all drink water the same way. We all get water from the same ways. And it's just important to be able to share the education, encouraging women to participate in local government and policy discussions where they demand clean water access, community-led solutions, creating local initiatives such as water filtration projects that you're already doing in Flint, hygiene education, and just creating mutual aid networks to address immediate needs is so important. And then recognizing how water justice connects with racial, economic, and environmental justice, and using that to build stronger coalitions.
Okay, thank you.
For me, I feel women must not only be water carriers, but be involved in decision making in water policy and then management. We can encourage young women to enter into water-related fields like engineering, policy, and then science. Also, push for policies that ensure women's voices are included in water management decisions. Also, supports grassroots organization who advocate for clean water and then sanitation. And then also demand for stricter enforcement of environmental laws to prevent illegal mining and then protecting water resources too as well.
Mhm. And I noticed that the both of you mentioned policy pushing as a form of advocacy. If there were maybe two to three policies that we should all push as women, even on a global scale, what are two or three of those policies that you would suggest that we unite as women and just really push forward when we talk about clean water and access to it?
I would say one would be to make sure that at least two women are on a board that is used to certify clean water in every jurisdiction. Another would be to advocate for women to be teachers in whatever wherever kids get education, whether it's in a mosque or if it's through church or through traditional Western schools, Western style schools, for women to be the trainers on empowering children and other men and women on how to test for clean water.
Okay, I also suggest that women should be in leadership roles to advocate to be able to advocate for clean water, and yes, so being in boards too as well, as Mrs. Felicity says too as well. I agree with that.
Mhm. And one of the things, thank you both for that. One of the things that we absolutely push at the Flint Community Lab, where we teach high school and college age students how to test water for heavy metals. And we're moving into bacteria testing. We're also moving into testing for PFAS and PFOS. But one of the things that we absolutely emphasize is that more women need to go into STEM educational careers and water educational careers. And it has been an honor to one serve my city as someone born and raised in Flint, so I had to go through the water crisis. So to now be the director of a lab that is addressing, what's in our water and teaching young women how to advocate for themselves, teaching them how to push for policy, because in addition to being the director of the Flint Community Lab, I am actually the vice president of the Flint City Council as well. And so we've been able to marry some of the policy work that is needed here in Flint to some of the water work that happens with the youth. And so I do wholeheartedly agree with you both when we talk about having women at the table, having our voices heard, and making sure that we are on the fight to push forward some of the policy. And while this is for Women's History Month, and we're talking about women and how we're breaking barriers, Miss Felicity, you did mention something earlier that I think is very important, and that is making sure that men are also advocating to have women in those spaces. If you both don't mind, if you could just speak a little bit more to the advocacy that men could also do to help push forward the cause of women in water, in this, in the quest for access to clean water.
I feel men could be in the room when this education and passing of knowledge is done. They could be, um, I say, bearers of the good news also. Make sure that their male relatives and their friends, either at work, in their religious houses, wherever it is, that they come out to support women and not just say, oh, that's women talk, because they're consumers of water too. And and I feel another way men could be there to support women is to just, for once, be in the shadows, sit down and let the women be up front to show that in this instance, because water is something we cannot live without, allow the women to lead. I think that's very important.
Mhm. Thank you.
Okay, I also think that just supporting us with this advocacy, men engage with females, they engage with the world too as well. They should support us with this advocacy, also help us with the advocacy as well. Yeah.
Thank you. And I know that as we're talking about um, women in water and us breaking barriers, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge Youth for Global Health and Social Justice's own Dr. Cheryl Simmons, who is indeed been a strong advocating voice for access to clean water for people, period, but especially for women and young girls. And she's been definitely moving around and breaking barriers for quite some time now. I do want to take this opportunity during this panel for us to just acknowledge some other women that we see that are breaking barriers that and access to clean water that our audience might not know about. So if you all would like to take this time to just acknowledge some women who are breaking barriers for access to clean water.
I haven't really thought about. I can think of Oprah years ago who
Mm-hmm.
empowered young girls at her school in South Africa to not just be educated the Western way, but to know how to take care of their families. I thought that was very important, and um, it left good memories with me. And locally in Nigeria, there it's usually wives of religious leaders who have taken this upon themselves to make sure women are empowered and educated. And and that's all I can think of right now.
Okay.
Okay, I can't really pinpoint, but back home I know there are upcoming NGOs that are being linked by women who go to these rural areas to help educate and then advocate for clean water as well. So I haven't really pinpointed, but yes, but I know of smaller NGOs that do that back home, and then community service too as well back home, with my religious sect. Sometimes we go to rural areas just to advocate and then also speak with chiefs in these communities to help curb this illegal mining activities, because before any person can come engage in any illegal mining, the community leaders should have approved any of that. So from there, we speak to them and tell them the importance. And most of the times, it is being headed by young females. Yes.
Okay, well, thank you both so much. And as we are coming to a close with our panel discussion, I want to thank you both for joining me this evening. It has been a true pleasure to speak with you both today. And then I want to thank everyone who has tuned into the discussion for Women in Water Breaking Barriers. Once again, thank you to Youth for Help. Excuse me, Youth for Global Health and Social Justice, and all the many initiatives that you do throughout the years. Thank you for allowing me to be your moderator for this panel discussion this evening. But before we get out of here, I do want to hear from both of you. Are there any final closing thoughts that you all want to express? And you both have 2 minutes to express them. So please take your time. And again, thank you both for joining.
Thank you. Water for me is not just a resource. And for many people around the world, water is not just a resource, it's a fundamental human right. And ensuring access to clean water and sanitation is a moral, social, and public health imperative. Women have always been at the forefront of justice movements, and in the fight for clean water, our voices and actions are needed more than ever. So, by standing together and advocating for systemic change and implementing community-driven solutions, we can all create a world where no one is denied this basic necessity. So, let's commit to action, whether through policy, outreach, or support, so that clean water is not a privilege, but a guarantee for all. And I'd like to give a shout out to the African women in water and climate. They empower African women to take leading roles in water and climate decision-making processes, promoting gender equality and inclusivity in these crucial sectors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Water is not just about survival. It's about dignity, education, and an opportunity. Women must be part of decision-making processes to drive real change. We all have a role to play, both women and men, and then the world, whether it is through advocating, investing, and then educating. Together, we can break barriers and then build a future where clean water is a right, not a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. Globally, fewer than 1 in 10 water sector workers are women, with their underrepresentation extending to technical and managerial roles. As Youth for Global Health and Social Justice celebrates World Water Day and Women's History Month, I thank you both for joining me for this panel for Women in Water Breaking Barriers. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for having me. Thank you.